voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John Show, yeah, it's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John Show, the finest in the land.
Yes, it is the Brad and John Show. I am Brad. He is John. John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, the most amazing guy, because every single day of his life for the past 23 years, he puts together this incredible list of all the things you should know about going on in the state of Missouri, not just weekdays, 7 days a week for the past 23 plus years. On Friday morning, especially John, because we have one person that we got rid of that intro and we brought it back because of one person, right, John?
Yeah, but we don't have to talk about Governor Mike Kehoe, like we're not going to mention his name.
John.
They play that song when you walk into the Dave Sinclair Ford showroom, Brad. They play it in honor of Mike Kehoe, because that was Mike Kehoe's request.
That's right. We bring in John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. Check out his website at johncombest.com. What do you do on Friday morning that's special? No other day of the week?
Time for the John Combest Top 3.
We bring in John Combest, and he does his top 3. Is that the German pronunciation of your name, Combest? Is that what that
I think those are Polish polka boys that we hear there, right, Brad?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, I'm not Polish because I can tie my shoes and walk and chew gum.
Whoa.
But I am Irish. Go ahead, Brad.
We bring in this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts us off with...
In third place,
a piece of legislation that Brad Hildebrand, number one, will have an opinion of, and number two, knows way more about than I do. So I'd be interested in your perspective after we lay this out, Brad. And that is a proposal to end Missouri sales tax on groceries. And that bill is sponsored by none other than friend of the show, Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman. There was a hearing this week, Brad, and there are plenty of people who are against ending sales tax on groceries. Can you believe that, Brad? Now predict, because you know this issue very well, Brad. You know taxation issues better than almost anybody. Why do you think some people wouldn't want to relieve Missourians of the burden of a grocery sales tax?
I don't even know where to start from all of the things that have been said that are just wrong.
Is that
yes.
Is that a good answer?
Right on cue, Brad. You're hitting on all 4 of your cylinders. You used to have 8, and then you turned 89, and now you're down to 4. But, Brad, why would people oppose it? A cut to grocery taxes?
You know, John, I've said this before. If the government came out and said, hey, we've dug this hole in Jefferson City to build a new building, and we hit this huge, cache of gold bars, and we figured out it's worth $100 trillion zillion dollars, and we're going to send each citizen in the state of Missouri a check for $250,000, there would be people showing up, oh, that's not right. We shouldn't be giving out those checks. I don't know. Why are they complaining about no taxes and groceries?
Well, because a percentage of, and by the way, to be clear, Senator Coleman's bill would not only eliminate state sales tax on food, but it would also eliminate local taxes on groceries. So that's a really controversial point here. Now, before we go any further, I should point out that this bill has bipartisan support. For example, the progressive state senator from the Kansas City area named Barbara Washington, she thanked Senator Coleman for once again bringing this bill forward. Senator Coleman has been bringing this bill forward since she was in the Missouri House. So there's a lot of folks who appreciate the idea of unburdening Missouri citizens from this grocery tax, from this tax on food. But the people who largely oppose it, Brad, are folks who run local governments. And they say that this would have a devastating effect on their local budgets. And what's the other important part of Senator Coleman's bill is that it would phase out over a period of 4 years. It would essentially give municipalities 4 years to figure out a way to make up for that revenue that they will lose in 4 years by not taxing food. So Senator Coleman's point is that those municipalities will have an opportunity to figure out what they want to do. If they want to go to their voters in that municipality and say, hey, we're losing X amount of revenue, we suggest we make it up with XYZ. Voters in that municipality would have a chance to vote on that. But as you could expect, Brett, I would just point out my favorite quote here from Senator Coleman is, you're going to hear from a number of people behind me. She was testifying for this bill. You're going to hear from a number of people behind me who think this is a terrible idea, Coleman said. I hold a lot of minority views, so that doesn't bother me too much. I'm hopeful I can convince you all that it's the right thing to do.
Well, now hold on a minute now. Let me think about this for a minute. There already is reduced state taxes or reduced taxes, sales tax on groceries, isn't there? You don't pay the full percentage that you would.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, but you would, but this would eliminate it altogether.
So in other words, what are you not paying right now? Is that the state portion of it that you're not paying right now on groceries?
What do you mean what do you mean that we're not paying?
Well, for example, if you go and buy let's say you go to the computer store and the sales tax rate in Bridgeton, like for example, you go to a computer store in Bridgeton, I don't even know if there is one, but you pay like 9%, 9.25%, whatever the prevailing sales tax rate is. But if you go next door to Schnucks in Bridgeton, you don't pay that full tax. Which portion of that tax are you not paying?
I don't know, and that's why I prefaced this, Brad, by saying that you're an expert on these tax issues.
Well,
I'm not I don't know what the answer to that is.
See, the goofy thing about this is, don't get me going on this, because of the fact that we've got a thing to talk about here later, that St. Louis Public Radio did this big piece on, they went and talked to the people that work at the Gateway Arch, the parks people.
No, are you serious?
You know about that. It's probably number...
Yeah, it's story number one. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, it is story number one. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll shut up and we'll move along to number two then.
Up a notch to number two.
Speaking of people that don't get a whole lot of money coming their way, let's talk about Missouri utilities, Brad. You know, to quote Gen Z, they're down bad. They don't get a lot of money every month. It's virtually everybody in the state of Missouri. They have passed, being electric companies, utilities in the state of Missouri, have passed a utility bill this year in the Senate, and it's going on to the Missouri House. This piece, by the way, a good explainer of this was brought to us in the Post-Dispatch by the gentleman named Ezra Bitterman, the appropriately named journalist Ezra Bitterman. The headline is Unlikely Coalitions Form as Senate Sends Massive Utility Bill to the House. The punchline here, Brad, is that there's Republicans and Democrats who oppose this monstrosity of a bill. I think even the advocates of it would call it a monstrosity because it's got a whole lot of things in it. And one of the biggest holdups is an issue, once again, Brad, that you're familiar with, which is the idea of Missourians paying for the construction of utility projects, big utility projects. Now, that's generally known as CWIP, Construction Works in Progress. And back in 1976, before I was even an apple in my parents' eye, Missouri voters put a ban. They voted to ban construction works in progress. So in other words, Ameren on this side of the state or Evergy on the other side of the state can't come to the legislature, can't come to voters and say, let me get this terminology right. They can't go to ratepayers and say, hey, we need you. We want to build a big, as Brad would say, fancy schmancy new plant. So we're going to charge you a little bit more for the next few years so that you can finance the construction of that plant. You with me so far, Brad?
Yeah, keep going.
So this bill would, I'll just finish touching on the bill here and then we can discuss it. So what this bill would do would essentially allow these groups to come back are these utilities to charge ratepayers, say starting next year, I believe it's starting next year, be able to charge a little bit more so that these utilities could finance the construction of new plants. Now, it appears, Brad, there's generally consensus that we need more energy in the state of Missouri, particularly for big things like data centers. If we're ever going to attract data centers, or if we continue to attract data centers to Missouri, they need more power. Big corporations need more power. We have more demand on the quote unquote energy grid than we did before. So I think everybody agrees that we need more energy. The question is, should taxpayers essentially finance this? I keep saying taxpayers, and I'm wrong here, because not everybody who pays a utility bill either votes or is a citizen, I guess. Should ratepayers be financing today Ameren and others to build buildings tomorrow? So and I'll touch real quickly too on the fact that this split across ideological lines. So for example, you have people who are known as big supporters of Ameren. There's a white male Democrat, one of the rarest breeds of human beings alive, a white male Democrat named Doug Beck, who represents South St. Louis County. And he's a big union guy. And he supported this bill. He said it's going to mean more manufacturing. It's going to mean more jobs for his people. So he voted for it. But you have Democrats who oppose it. You have Republicans who say, hey, look, we need to help these energy companies. We need to maintain our energy independence. We need to not be dependent on all these foreign companies. We need to generate energy right here in Missouri. And then you have other Republicans that say, we can't be subsidizing the Amerens and the Evergys of the world. If they want to pay for a facility, pay for it out of their own money. So it passed the Senate. I guess to get down to brass tacks here, Brad, it passed the Senate, will go on to the House. It's a little bit easier in the Missouri House to ramrod things through. You don't have a filibuster in the Missouri House. So if House leaders want to pass this in the coming weeks, I think they'll be able to do it. And it looks like, according to this piece, which quotes a consumer group called Consumer Councils of Missouri, Missourians with Ameren Electric, Spire Gas, and Missouri American Water Service will most likely be faced with an increase of at least $1,100 a year in their utility bills. So it's a lot of money, Brad. Now, that's coming from a group that's opposed to this, and the utilities would probably argue with that number. I've droned on long enough about this. What do you think, Brad?
Don't get me going about this. I mean, I think we need energy independence from Ameren, Spire, and Missouri Water. How about that? I mean, we need a choice.
Yeah, that's a long-held position by you.
Well, you get these monopolies, and they can do whatever they want. I mean, and once again, it cracks me up when Ameren runs ads. Are my favorite one, Quiver River, which I have powers. 2 are my 3 transmitter sites. When Quiver River runs ads, like if on KMOX, okay, Quiver River has a small footprint in St. Charles County. They have a lot of customers in Warren and Lincoln, I think in Pike County as well, too. If you're a listener to KMOX and you're in Belleville and you hear this ad for Quiver River, and you call them up, you go, I heard your ad, I want to get your power. They'll say, well, I'm sorry, you don't live in the right place. Why are they advertising? I mean, why do they advertise? Why does Spire advertise? What is the purpose of that, John? You're a PR guy. Why are they doing that?
And we've talked about this several times on the show. So one of the reasons why they spend money to advertise is to remind people what a great job they're doing. So Ameren has fantastic ads that talk about what they're doing to enhance the power grid, how they're making energy more reliable. So, of course, it makes sense for an Ameren or Aspire to advertise. They're not advertising to acquire market share. They're advertising to remind you what a great job they do bringing you the services that you need.
John, when you were working at Monsanto/Bayer, did you ever get together with your fellow comms people from from Ameren, people like that, and throw back some brewskis and stuff like that and laugh about, oh, man, we've hoodwinked all these people. Man, we tell them this and they eat it right up. You ever done that before?
Well, we were sensitive about talking to people about what they were eating, Brad. Come on. Now, uniquely, I think I can share this. I was involved in some communications efforts that were opposing Ameren because I worked at Monsanto. Do you see the connection there, Brad?
I don't. Why were you opposing? So officially, Monsanto was opposing Ameren's stuff? Why was that? Because they weren't using...
Yeah. So go ahead and take a guess. You know the industry very well.
Well, they weren't using Roundup around their telephone poles or something like that?
No, that's not why. Because Monsanto and other big corporations throughout the state of Missouri use a lot of energy. And companies like the old Monsanto and other big companies don't want to finance Ameren constructing works before they're actually built. So Monsanto this is public. This isn't, and I think the statute of limitations has run out on this. But we coordinated with groups that opposed Ameren on CWIP because we pointed out, I think publicly the groups would say that it's not fair to Joe ratepayer, but it's also not fair to why should Monsanto and Energizer and Purina, folks that use a ton of energy, why should we subsidize Ameren building new facilities? Why should ratepayers subsidize that ahead of time? So as large energy users, we funded and coordinated on some messaging about why that wasn't good for everyone.
Well, see, you want my libertarian view of this. I think that that they should also put something in this bill that as people build their houses, they should be able to send Ameren a bill for $1,000 a month for their house being built, because that way the people can say, well, we're paying you because ultimately you're going to make money off of us. So we want you to help us building our house. So therefore we can put money in your pocket once it's done, and we can turn the meter on and have juice flowing through our wires in our house, and it all just works out in the end, And Ameren will, whoa, we can't do that. Pay for your house is being built? No way in hell, right? And the way it would be.
Yeah, I would love to see their response to that, their attorney's response to that. I think it also just makes perfect sense. And I'm sure Ameren didn't come up with this, or the old Union Electric didn't come up with this in the 70s. I'm sure Consolidated Edison, Con Ed, or somebody came up with this in the 50s. But for a corporation that, as you point out, Brad, has essentially a monopoly, to come out and say, I wonder if we could get ratepayers to actually subsidize stuff a decade ahead of time. Wouldn't that be awesome? So you can't blame Ameren or any other utility for this,
This is before your time, John, but Southwestern Bell ran an ad campaign decades ago when they were like the monopoly, and they had this acronym for it. But the saying was, we may not be the only telephone company in town, but we don't try to act like it. Remember that? Do you remember that campaign?
No, I don't remember that.
I thought to myself, okay, you're drawing attention to the fact that you're a monopoly, but we don't act like it. Yeah, right.
But okay. You're a benevolent dictator.
Yes.
And speaking of dictators, we got to talk about Donald Trump. I know we'll end up continuing this in B block, but let's at least give the teaser for story number 1, Brad.
Okay.
The number 1.
As accurately predicted by Brad Hildebrand minutes ago, the top story on JohnCombest.com today, one of the top stories on JohnCombest.com today, comes from St. Louis Public Radio. It's by a content creator. She's the morning newsreader named Abby Lorico. And here's the headline. Gateway Arch National Park worker says employees are being, quote, terrorized, unquote, by job cuts. They're being terrorized, Brad. Now, some people, we'll get into this more in B block, but some people were let go. Technically, they were probationary employees. They weren't even full-fledged employees, but that doesn't matter. They're being terrorized, Brad. They were let go. How? How will the arts survive the spring and summer tourism season without all of these employees terrorized, Brad? And I should point out before we get into B block that this employee spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retribution. Now, I'm hopeful. If an employee says that government cuts are terrorizing them, I'm guessing they're either a female or maybe a gay man. But I think we can assume that a man wouldn't describe cuts as terrorizing. So in B block, Brad, let's talk about this. I think this is horrific. I think the Gateway Arch should be hiring more people for the tourism season.
Why is it that NPR and its affiliates just focus on the fact that people are just being treated terribly, and they focus on these people who are essentially got the dream jobs, but yet a Parks Department person, okay? Nobody's shooting at you. Well, for the most part, they're not. Maybe down in the arch they are. Nobody's shooting at you. You're not really breaking a sweat. I mean, you're not, making big rocks and, small rocks out of big rocks. You know what I'm saying?
I do
It's
know
to the
exactly
point
what you mean.
and don't get me going on parks, because you know how I feel about parks. My stance
I
on
know you're heading to pick up trash at Klondike Park today.
Yes, and I will be the only person in the park. Maybe I'll drive through. I haven't driven through Klondike Park in a while to accentuate. What's your buddy out there? John Lamping, isn't his name?
No, I think you used to call him. Why don't we just stick with Mark Lamping? He hangs out with Ricky Schroeder. All these people.
Okay, we have.
I was going to invite him. Actually, there's a ball out there, and I was going to invite Jason Law, but he's uppity and stuck up, so I'm not going to invite him. 14 people called me yesterday to tell me that. He doesn't go to their bunco meetings anymore. Can you believe it? He thinks he's too good.
Well, he doesn't go to the bunco meetings because that would be a conflict of interest, because he's a county cop. He'd have to arrest him if he went to the bunco
That's
meetings.
true.
Right?
Good point, Brad.
He says, okay, everybody, hands on the table. I'm putting the bracelets on you. That's what he'd be saying. Okay. No, he'd call in a SWAT squad, because that's what he does. Okay.